Extra.
Konnichiwa and welcome. You're tuned into Kawaii-Fi Radio, the podcast we from the world of anime, manga, and otaku culture. I'm Kyle, and with me is Aaron, Tifa, and Kenny.
Hello.
Hello, everybody.
Hi.
How you doing?
We're alive.
Made
Barely.
it back in one piece.
I did.
One Piece!
One Piece. I found it.
One Piece! One Piece is real!
Yes, our good one Kyle is back from Japan at long last, and he had a good one.
Yes, I did. I went driving in the snow. Tokyo Drift.
Normally people ski in the snow. You're a strange one.
Yeah, I am.
It's no big deal.
Oh, God. Anyway, this episode is a mini. We are talking about the new anime film, The Lord of the Rings, The War of the Rohirrim. Now, I do say new. It did come out in cinemas end of last year. Tifa, you got to go to the Australian premiere. Mm-hmm. It is now landing on streaming on HBO Max and Binge as of this weekend. However, if you are not in an area with Max or Binge, you can buy it or rent it on Amazon Prime and Apple TV, along with a few other services. Don't get it as part of your package. Like you shouldn't be paying like $6 to rent when you can get it as part of a subscription. Get the whole month.
You could buy a very, very good coffee for that amount. 2
Or
coffees.
one cheeseburger.
Yes, buy a cheeseburger.
In Australia, at least. I can't believe how cheap the cheeseburgers were in Japan.
How cheap is
Oh,
cheeseburger?
yeah.
It's amazing. Tifa knows. It's just like they're like the prices we had 20 years ago. It was $2
Yeah.
for a cheeseburger.
Oh.
I got a
And
double
then you come back
cheeseburger
to
for
Australia and you're like, why is it so expensive
$3.
here?
Yeah, like I did enjoy the food of Japan.
I mean, I was very jealous of that place you went to in Kyoto, Dragon Burger. That looked...
Dragon Burger was amazing. Anyone who goes to Kyoto, Dragon Burger is out east from the main strip, and it is worth a visit. It is next to a whole load of museums and stuff. Very good food.
looks really good.
Mm-hmm. Now, let's talk about Lord of the Rings, The War of the Rohirrim. This is by... Technically, the studio is Solar Digital Arts. They did Ultraman, Appleseed Alpha, The Evangelion, and other Impact CG. Do you remember like the short film of the AV unit going berserk?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we all thought that was an independent. No, this was part of a series of stuff done, and Solar Digital Arts were in charge of it.
Okay.
It's also been produced by Warner Brothers Animation, Wingnut Films, Line Cinema, and Solar Entertainment, parent studio of Solar Digital. And Kenji Kamiyama is the director. Now...
Who we will be blaming this evening.
No, we won't be blaming him, but he shares the blame. So, look, this is a film which is set 200 years before The Hobbit, I believe, before Bilbo's journey, and it focuses on the Rohirrim and everything that's going on in that little caldera of Middle Earth, if you will, where you're at Rohan and
Rohan are the civilization of men who are very, very adept at horses. They like to ride horses in a battle.
they're horsemen.
They are horsemen.
Centaurs?
No, they're just from Byford. They're horse people. Okay,
yeah.
so
Oh,
That's
Sarah
a local
Michelle
joke,
Gellar.
people.
anyway, I don't have anything for you. I'm sorry. I'm not ready for this. Now, the War of the Rohirrim is mostly centered around a lady. Hera. And
Oh no, it's Hera.
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 So there is the Dunlendings, who are to the west of the mountain pass, and then there is Helm Hammerhand and his people, who are in town name
Edoras.
which we see in
Look,
Lord of the
you're
Rings
going to need a
films.
glossary. Just take some notes while you're listening to this one, people. There's
Yeah.
a lot. Every time Lord of the Rings is brought up, there's a lot to go through.
So if you have watched Lord of the Rings movies, you know of Helm's Deep. This is how Helm's Deep got its name, and it's Kenny doesn't agree on that, but that's what the story's about, unfortunately.
No, it's not. Not according to Tolkien. Excuse me.
Yeah, I know it's not according to the law, but that's what this film is about. The film is not law accurate, and that's probably why it is very poorly rated, but there are other reasons that the rating is not so high, and we will get stuck into them. Now, first things first, Tifa, I want you to cast your mind back 3 months ago to when you saw this in the cinemas.
Yeah.
What was the audience reaction like?
I did actually talk to a lot of people after the film about what they thought. The first thing that I think almost everybody said was, I liked this better than the Amazon series.
Yep, that's also what we said was the measuring stick.
That isn't saying much.
A lot of people were like, I see like the vision, like I see where this could have gone, like I understand it, but it feels like they just didn't like quite get there. It's like here is where they needed to be, but they were like halfway there. Like they had the ideas there, but because they just couldn't execute everything correctly. And also that there was too many kind of, I don't know if it's like subplots, but they couldn't confirm a direct. They wouldn't they couldn't confirm a direction. They wouldn't go in a specific way. They were kind of like, oh, well, it could be this or it could be that. They didn't just hit one point like really hard and go straight for that. And because of that, there's like an indecisiveness on the tone of the film, which is really like unfortunate. But everybody who watched it, even though they also like agreed in that part, did enjoy their experience watching it. I think in a cinema, it's really nice to obviously see this. And people like animation just in general. It's like they can do like a few cooler stuff and you're like, oh yeah, that looked really cool. That looked really nice and things like that. Oh, I like the way that was designed.
What did you think of the very active camera following the horse through the bushes?
Yes, the ADHD camera angle.
As Kenny put it.
Interesting.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So we've got a couple of notes here from what we discussed while we were watching it, and it does feel kind of like the story is trying to shoehorn every possible reference it can in. Where, you know, because of that, it kind of feels like the overall story's kind of been dumbed down a little bit. Like people's, what would you call it? Their reason for doing things. Their motivations are very loose. The motivations serve the plot, not the other way around.
Yes, it's like they are doing this so that the plot can happen.
Yeah.
It's not that these are natural human reactions to stimulus. These are just plot notes.
Yeah. And I mean, we did, like, I think all of us can agree, the background artwork and the main artwork were really well done. The animation, not so. Because sometimes the animation was absolutely beautifully fluid. Like, you can tell these are the ones where they've done the rotoscoping to check that the movement is correct.
Whereas other times, as Aaron pointed out, it looked like it was from a Zelda game, and we're talking.
Some of it was janky.
Like Frecker when he's in the hall at the beginning doing this.
Announcing what I'm saying, and I can't stop moving.
Yeah, it seemed like the idea was there from based on what someone would have done performatively. But the frame rate wasn't high enough to capture that in a way, because you got to remember animation frame rates are much lower than film frame rates.
And they were symptoms that carried on. Like, there was instances where the animation was flowing perfectly, it looked very, very consistent, and then it would just hit a brick wall.
And we discussed this while we were looking at the credits, and when you do watch the credits, and I do recommend you do to get an idea of the scope of how bloody big this was, there are support studios in China, Japan, and Korea. There are support staff for scenes and photography in New Zealand. There were support staff in the US. There were support staff in Canada. Now, production was being managed by the US via Japan. So whether Japan's operations studio, where the director was then directing to Korea and the Chinese support studios, or whether the US was controlling all three, is obviously we don't know. But because of that, we suspect there might be an issue both with time difference, communication, and obviously goal setting and understanding what the target was. Now, this is not to say that China or Korean studios cannot do good animation work. They are a regular part of the current anime industry. They provide support for so many studios and so many productions you would not believe. If you see Dr. Movie on any animation credits, they're Korean and they support so many studios with their work. So it's not the fact that the work in these studios are of low quality. That's not where the issue would have been. There clearly must have been, when parts are being animated, different things were being told to the studios, and when it all put together, it doesn't match up.
Not to mention this movie was famously quite rushed.
Yeah. Tifa, you said you had some information on that about the time frame, because I think you were saying it was something to do with a rights issue?
Yeah, so they kind of like, when we had the Spider-Man rights issue, right? And like they just kind of started rushing out those Andrew Garfield films so they could use the IP until they didn't have any anymore. It was kind of something similar to that. Sorry, I keep moving my mic and it's moving my camera.
No, there's an earthquake.
It's kind of similar to that because they knew that at some point they would no longer have the IP for this as well, and that if there was also something about like this is very similar with Amazon where there are aspects of the Tolkien story that they are not allowed to use. Just FYI. So they have to alter that for their productions because they have to get specific use for that section of this and like the years and the timing and all that kind of stuff. So because they can't use certain things, but they have this IP to be able to use this, they kind of rushed it together to try and create something, especially because there was like an original idea for this to be live action, but they realized they wouldn't have enough time to do live action to get all of the actors that they wanted specifically to like all of their schedules to work. So they thought maybe if we do an animation, then they can record in home studios or somewhere nearby or like they don't need to be in the same place at the same time. So that's kind of
it's
how
interesting
that
because
works.
the voice acting wasn't bad. Like there wasn't anything terrible in the voice acting component. So that part being rushed clearly didn't impact it as much as they expected it would.
No, the voice acting was pretty reasonable quality.
I think it could have also been that they recorded the voice lines before they started animation as well, and then they tried to like match up that like for both the Japanese and English, something similar to that. But because the actors for this are kind of more known actors and not just voice actors. Not that voice actors don't do a fantastic job, but they aren't specifically voice actors.
Yeah, well, as Kenny noted that, like when we were watching the credits list, he saw a couple of familiar names.
Yes, indeed. Billy Boyd and John Monaghan. I think that's
Dominic?
Dominic Monaghan. Yes, who played Merry and Pippin, the hobbits in the original movies. Yeah, they voiced a pair of random orcs
Who just appear for like one long scene. That's it.
And Miranda Otto, I think, is
She's the narrator.
Yeah.
Who played Eowyn in the original movie.
Yeah, it's good to see them bring some of those cast back. Now we've got
another random cameo by Saruman as well.
Oh,
close to the end.
Yeah,
that was
interesting.
Yeah, we were discussing it after.
There are opinions on that like.
Do we know if it was an existing line that hadn't been used or if it was artificially created?
Existing. It was existing.
Line. Okay,
Figured as much.
That's okay. I can go. I can abide by that. And at least it was just like one scene. It wasn't like they did the whole film with it.
Like Star Wars did with Carrie Fisher.
I mean, even the Carrie Fisher one wasn't too bad.
I don't know,
don't get me wrong, I don't like the films.
Yeah.
But
I think with the Carrie Fisher one as well, because she started like she was going to be doing that film and had signed onto it. I feel like there's a bit more leeway in comparison to using someone who didn't necessarily sign on to a film.
Such as the guy from the original Star Wars film who passed away and they reused him.
Yeah, that was. There's something ghoulish about using a dead actor's face.
Yeah, but
Moff Tarkin.
Yeah,
that's the one.
Yeah.
That was using Mr. Crusher. Oh, sorry, Crushing.
Peter
Crushing.
Peter Crushing.
Yes.
I was like, Wesley Crusher?
So I should know his name. He's like one of my favorite in the Hammer horror movies.
Okay, so let's talk director. It's Kenji Kamiyama. Now, he worked as a background artist on Akira and Kiki's Delivery Service, so he's a good artist. He wrote Blood the Last Vampire and was the animation for Jinro the Wolf Brigade. He was also the director for Ghost of the Shell standalone complex, the series, and Blade Runner Black Lotus, along with Eden of the East and the 4-year run of Ultraman anime.
Wow, what happened?
He then did Ghost in the Shell 2045.
Oh.
Yeah. Anyway.
I have opinions about it.
Well, we don't like that adaptation. It's not very good. Anyway, he actually has done a few interesting interviews. One with IndieWire in particular was quite interesting. Said that the production specific time frame was much, much shorter than that of a Japanese anime film. For them, what might have taken closer to a decade and involved a big set of animation directors was instead done in just a few years with a single director. An arduous process process Cho candidly talked about as being unprecedented. They motion captured data to CG movement for camera checks to every single shot that comes up in terms of drawing, and Kamiyama had to look through every single one and check them.
Oof.
He
No
says,
wonder it almost killed him.
he said he nearly killed himself doing it, but he got it done. Now, that's not good.
No, that kind of crunch is what we're trying not to have in this industry.
Yeah, and as Tifa said, there was an upcoming deadline on when the rights would go. So, yeah, so this is interesting. It's a rare blockbuster animated project for a major studio done entirely in 2D because the animators had limited time frame in which to work. The methods used weren't the normal 2D workflow. So they took the character acting, rather than relying on animators studying real people and interpreting the performance in 2D, they motion captured them and translated it into 2D to draw over. So that's not a terrible idea, but I also understand why this means my anime list hasn't listed it as an anime, because technically this is more akin to
The old Disney films?
yes, but
Very similar, yeah.
but I was going to say A Scanner Darkly.
With the rotoscope. Scanner Darkly is
it's the same principle.
I don't know. Have you seen that one, Tifa?
I haven't seen it, but I've heard of it.
Yeah,
It's,
it's a Philip K. It's a Philip K. Dick book, I think.
It's a fascinating visually to see.
It's one of the audiobooks I've got on my list to listen to soon. So, yeah. He says, I don't... Oh, here we go. We had motion capture as a base that the animators would then exaggerate or reinterpret. Because the production had to collaborate with international studios and animators worldwide to finish, it sometimes meant a lot of trial and error. I'd tell them, don't trace, but they'd still just trace it, and it would look robotic rather than natural movement. So this explains a lot of the drops we've had in some of the animation scenes. So that actually...
And it's like you said, massive communication issues.
Yeah, so like... Some shots, however, were done traditionally, like Hera's duel with Wolf at the end, which was done entirely using keyframes rather than motion capture. And that explains why it looked so good.
And I mean, with those time constraints and those kind of conditions in mind, I think it explains, and I can't hate them for just how terrible all the fight scenes were. Just how...
They did their best with what they were given.
What they were given.
They did.
And I feel like that's a very backhanded compliment because they were clearly trying, but
yeah,
the
I still
final
think
product was lacking.
It's still better than some of the other things that some of these major studios produce.
I mean, look, this is still better
at least
animated.
Tell that they kind of care.
This is still
the
better
director
animated than
cared.
anything Gohans has made. So
Ooh, shots fired.
I don't like him. Go bring it.
Yeah,
but you are right, Tifa. It suggests they care. So
there was some passion behind it. It's just passion needs time.
Yeah.
I mean, the biggest takeaway we had from it was obviously the story's a bit dumbed down.
Yeah.
Doesn't make a lot of sense. Decisions seem rushed for the sake of the plot.
The script is
Predictable.
The writers deserve to be homeless.
We had a few moments of, oh, this is going to happen. It happened.
But also we think this could have been better done as a short series, a 6-episode run for Netflix.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah.
Or like a series of 2 films. Because as a film, it tried to put too much in while wasting time on, realistically in a film situation, unnecessary scenes, which you would have more time for character building in a series.
But there you go again. Time is the factor, and it's that which they didn't have. And it's just, I feel like if you can't do it right, don't.
Yeah, I mean, if you split...
I think they...
Oh, you go, Tifa, sorry.
I was just going to say, I think if they just chose what they actually wanted to say within this film, because in the beginning, you kind of have like this section and you're like, oh, okay, I see what you're setting up for. This is cool. Mm-hmm. And the interaction you get with Wolf and Hedda, there's like, their interaction is not emotional or connective enough to pursue the rest of the film. And if they focused on that in the beginning and they actually made a specific decision, it could have simplified the rest of the script, and then it would have been more than just a fine movie. Because I don't think this is a bad film, but I think it's just mediocre.
Yeah.
Like, it's fun, but it's not like we can see the issues in it quite clearly, which can take you out of it.
I mean, we were discussing this as well, that like some of the scripting is a bit stilted. Some scenes last longer than they need to, which definitely contributes to a 2-hour 15 runtime. It doesn't need to be that long. You could probably cull a good 10 minutes of additional like lagged scenes that didn't need to be in there.
And some of the edits are also very amateurish. Like they'll flash to show that someone's got a dagger or is taking off a ring.
Yeah.
But it won't last long enough, or it'll just be sort of there and gone. It feels like, I don't know. Yeah, I shouldn't be too harsh.
I mean, you will be, but
I will be,
You
yes.
love Tolkien, and that's fair.
Well, there were like conversations where like one person would stop talking and the animation would freeze, and I thought that there was legitimately like an animation buffer.
I know.
Because it'd stop for a
yeah.
second and then it'd continue
Like,
and then
you
it'd
coulda-
stop again.
You
and
could have cut out like a good 5 frames there to improve the flow.
That being said, there is actually a point in there where it feels like they've removed a scene, because there is a point where Hera is with,
Wolf?
she's like in the barns or something, and then all of a sudden she's like outside running where
Yeah.
everybody's like starting
Yeah.
the war. There should have been something in between there. It's a different time of day as well, but they don't even show that
Yeah.
like anything to show how she's out there with the same person or like whatever it was. I can't remember what it was specifically, but it really feels like they cut something out there that needed to be in there, but they kept in stuff that didn't need to still be there.
Yeah, we were discussing this, like some of the action scenes, and we now understand why, because of the stylized sequences they were using, and obviously the rush they had, and why some things definitely looked a lot more stilted. But there were some scenes where the action scene is too slow. And then, because this is an animated medium, like you look at any other anime film, you have the opportunity to accelerate that function, that scene where the fight is. You can cut most of those fights in half and improve the flow of them so that it doesn't feel as awkward and stilted. And I understand, like as I said, we understand why this has occurred now. It's just disappointing to see. Also, like they gave more urgency to a horse chase scene than the big fights. Is probably one of like the big criticisms I've got. Like we did joke about it having the ADHD camera because it was like every possible angle, swing around. Further
from
to
between
that,
the legs as well.
yeah, it was a weird
A
shot.
horse panty shot? That's new to me.
Oh, God. The horror.
I don't know. Have you seen that Horse Prince dating simulator game?
Yes, we have. But there was just other inaccuracies and weirdness to the world. Like,
Oh, we could pick apart
Well,
that forever.
the-
I don't know how much time we should spend.
well, we're going to do this very quickly. So the Watcher in the Water, which is the doors of Moria, that secret
it's
entrance.
the tentacle monster which chases them through.
That's a week away by horse. It's also on the wrong side of the mountains. It's 900 kilometers by map.
And let's face it.
And she got there in afternoon?
Yeah. There's little bits like that. The fact that there was Oliphants at all is just like, oh, okay, I see. You're doing this because they were in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
And there was actually rather a lot of that. It's like things are included or things happen. Entire events transpire because they happened in the original movies.
Yeah.
It felt like very much like a recent Star Wars trilogy where
Yeah.
it's basically just a mirror of what someone else did ages ago.
Yeah, it feels more like as you say, it's member berries. It's, do you remember this? Do you remember this? This was in the original thing. We're connected to that, as opposed to
You liked this, so you'll like it again.
yeah,
Yes.
exactly. We'll put it in a jam this time. Like, you know, it just kind of feels
There
like
was a
they
lot
were
of that.
relying too much. Like it was a crutch that they were unwilling to part with. Where they could have, like, you get rid of that Watcher in the Water story. You get rid of the Oliphants and make it something else. Make it a beast. Any
Yeah.
other beast. Have them
There's
chase her
plenty of
through
other
there.
monsters in a magical fairy tale world.
Yeah.
Also, that was a dead end that they never really explored. The undead things.
Yeah.
There was a lot. I feel like the undead things were actually potentially the they weren't undead. I think it was the 2 orcs
Oh, yeah.
going around with their big monster friend.
Yeah.
But the Oliphant, it was had half
Rabid.
an ear cut off. It was
Yeah.
like, it was
Oh, yeah.
very heavily damaged.
Yeah.
And it had a sword straight through the stomach, but it was still going.
Yeah. Look, I mean, there is a lot of cut corners in this. And if I
It
think
would have benefited from having a lot more time, being a series, being a set of 3 movies.
yeah.
I can't believe I'm advocating for that after The
Well,
Hobbit.
actually, in this case, I'd say 2. because you could have the sea all the way up to the siege. You could really build the environment that you're in. We've already got the world to explore in. Build the environment. Build out what's happening at Isengard before they go there, as opposed to, we're at Isengard. They're taking the princess to Isengard. To Isengard.
For God's sakes, flesh out the characters. Flesh out the villain. He's the most...
I mean, the first major fight scene, the concept was well written. Like, yep, we're going to have this happen, and then this is going to happen, and the fight is going to end. But it was forced, and the result afterwards was forced. Like, they faced each other on equal terms, no surprise. The results, however, were treated as a shock, and it's like, you're talking to a guy who literally rips enemies apart with his bare hands. That is his law. Like, and you're surprised that one hit did it? Really?
This guy who's gotten fat and old and just doesn't know anything about anything.
I am shocked. Shocked. Well, not that shocked.
Like, Wolf is really dumb.
Yes.
Well, I mean, like, they really could have played off that, though, if everybody else was not that surprised. And Wolf is the only one that's, like, surprised because he, like, let's face it, is a bit of a himbo. Yeah. And, like,
but not in a good
that
way.
ostracizes him and, like, makes him away from everybody else. It ostracizes him, and they don't play into that as much as they need to because he still has people on his side and other people around them are shocked. They could have really made him just the lone wolf. Like, it's stupid because it falls into his name, but it works really well.
You know
if they pushed it.
100%, that would have made the storyline more believable.
That would have made it a much better because you're trying to go into a fist fight against the man named Helm Hammerhand, and you're antagonizing him, and just stupid.
Like,
everything's stupid.
You got the first 3 blows in. Everything from here on's fair.
Yeah, like he gave you the opportunity. He's like, all right, I've shown you I can take your hits. Take one of mine. And it wasn't even a good hit. It was a backhand.
Yeah.
He literally pimp slapped him to death. Like, come on.
You played yourself. You've been pimp slapped.
Now, look, if you are a big fan of Lord of the Rings, you're probably not going to like this film.
Yeah.
Like, if you do not enjoy Rings of Power, you definitely won't like it because, like, Rings of Power, like, sorry, but Rings of Power's writing is terrible.
Look, you'll enjoy this slightly more than you enjoyed Rings of Power because
I think a lot of people, even though there are animation issues, you'll probably enjoy it for the animation, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Like, it's kind of like
beautiful.
just nice
There's
and
artistry
refreshing
to
to
it.
see it in this way.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's a lot of questions we have. Why do they have eagles from the north and the south? Like, come on. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm sure there would be a way to explain it, but no one ever does. And that's the problem because they aren't down there. If they had them there, they would have flown to Isengard and then flown over to Mount Doom and dropped the ring off in the films.
Oh, well, it seemed that they weren't on talking terms, even though they are known to talk. There's too much.
There's a lot. Now, don't get me wrong. They had a law expert on board, and
A consultant.
was a consultant. Yeah, and
But for which, like, part of the production is the other thing. If they have so many, like, production areas, who is she consulting with?
She's based
and is that coming across to the other side?
So she's
as
based
well?
in the US, and I bet her role was to inform Warner Brothers and New Line what they were going to do. And then obviously Warner Brothers and New Line are the barrier there. And just like we've seen with how things happen with Japanese productions when they go from manga to anime, sometimes that information doesn't get passed along. Sometimes it is purposely not passed along because the production company don't want to do it.
Errors in communication all the way down.
Yeah. So, and we know she's actually good at her job because she was involved in both previous Lord of the Rings projects as a consultant.
Written a fair few books as well. I've got one of them.
Yeah. So, like, she's not bad. She's good at her job. The problem is people don't listen.
Yeah,
and
it's unfortunate.
It's really frustrating.
I hate it when they do listen to some of the wrong lore experts. The one on Rings of Power went on TV to say there's no such thing as canon.
Here it is.
I just personally think people like that should be hunted for sport. I'm not sure if I can say that on air.
You shouldn't, but oh well. It's too late. We've gotten here now. Anyway, look.
I do wonder, though, like, so a lot of young kids, I guess, or even maybe like 10-year-olds, kind of scared of Lord of the Rings, like the original Lord of the Rings, but
Fair.
would have Some are like some
It is-
kids are scared of Harry Potter.
Keep in mind, these are rated. The original films were rated PG, parental guidance. They were violent and they did have scary themes in them.
A guy broke his foot.
But yeah,
God's
like
sakes.
because it is sort of targeted. It includes kids, right, in the demographic, and some kids would be a little too scared or tried to watch it and were too scared to watch it. I do think that this is probably a really good option for a younger audience to get into the series. I know
don't
that sounds
know.
weird, but it's just there's a lot that when you're young you kind of tune out and things like
This
that.
is
But
true.
to experience the world and visually in this way is like such an interesting thing that I think I could play this to maybe like a 7 or 8 year old who's never seen Lord of the Rings or was interested in it because they hear about it online, they read like all these things, and then like they'd watch it, they would start to understand things in a simplistic way, and it would lead them to watch the films like in a better headspace, if that makes sense. Because like my brother, for example, is terrified of Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings and everything
Really?
possible. If he watched this, he would have gone and watched the other films.
This as well. Interestingly, this is also rated PG-13 for strong violence. I
Yeah,
wouldn't.
but it's animated.
It's animated,
violence as
yeah.
opposed
Yes.
to like actual people.
But we did have someone with an axe hacking into an elephant's neck for a good minute. Like,
But it's animation.
animated, though.
And my mom would say that animation, like all of the animation, you're a kid, you can watch it. It doesn't matter. I don't care if they're all dying. It's fine.
Ninja Scroll.
yeah.
Oh god.
So interestingly, and we were watching this as we the credits came through. A total of over 60 animation studios were involved in this.
Jesus.
Ones from Japan that we recognize: Mappa OLM, Studio 4 Degree C, Production IG. They also had to rely on Unreal Engine to plan the shots, not like create them, but to use them to stage it, to say, okay, this is how it'll look based on the thing we've used.
Fascinating.
As with other recent animated projects like Evangelion, the production used Unreal to test out shot composition, layouts, camera angles, and character placement, first rendering them in 3D until they were satisfied with the shot, then sending the rough layout to the animation studios and partners to turn them into sequences.
I suppose
Which makes sense
It's
as
a good
quick,
idea.
given the limited time, makes sense.
not even given limited time. I just think as like a tool for visualizing characters and stuff like that. That's an interesting way to do it.
Yeah. I mean, the director does say there are parts where the camera is moving very smoothly. You wonder if it looks too clean like a 3D animation, but it is done in 2D. And we do see moments like that. There are a lot of landscape shots where people are running or dodging or on horses. They look so smooth, and it's because they did it right in those scenes. And then there are others where you're like,
You mean the part where she flips over Wolf?
yeah. Yeah, that's weird. Interestingly, the person who did the Watcher in the Water was handled by a single animator, and Hisao Yokobori, and he's known for his work on the Lupin the Third franchise. So
I was so hoping you were going to say Digimon. I was going to be like, oh, you mean like the Hydramon TCG card?
yeah, it kind of looks like a Digimon in this. It's kind of a bit off. He asked to do the Watcher and drew the whole thing himself. We had some of it cut because of runtime, but hopefully we can show more of his work if we get to do an extended cut. I don't think it needs one. It's already too long. So
And it's just, why are you even there?
I couldn't find its nose.
No comment.
Anyway, if you are interested, it is on video on demand, and as we said, it is going to come up over on HBO Max, or just Max as it's called now, and it's associated groups over the coming months. It is out now over there, but if you don't have access to them, it is available on Amazon and Prime and Apple TV to rent and buy. I would recommend just buy the month of Max or whatever your associated platform is and watch it there if you really do want to.
Yeah.
Then you can watch other things.
Exactly, because this isn't like, it's that old adage of like, is this something people should, rush to watch? I'd say no. Like, it's
No.
interesting. It made Kenny drink 2 beers very quickly, and he's not a drinker. But
I needed the support.
it's look, I enjoyed it for the visual experience. I did not enjoy it for the storytelling. Like, I think that's the easiest way to put it in my book.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, Kenny hated it for the lore inaccuracies and for, like, the poor writing, and I can concede that. Aaron was just there for the ride.
Yeah.
Kenny did bring up the voice actors as well, and I do think that the voice actors deserve, like, especially the English voice actors were surprisingly quite decent.
Yeah. But yeah, we haven't listened to it in Japanese. We probably should have, but the default language was English, and we were just kind of a bit like, I just need to watch. I want to watch it.
I'll leave
I want to know
that
what's
for
going on.
other people to review.
Yeah, maybe it'll feel better in Japanese, but the subtitles directly merit it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, like it definitely is the same sort of issue we've had with a lot of Western adaptations of Eastern media, where that sounds bad. Western adaptations of Japanese specific media, where they don't get the tone right and they misunderstand things, or they rush it. But it's been done. Yeah,
Cowboy Bebop comes to mind.
that's exactly what I was going to say. Like, there are things you can do better, and this is not the worst animated film we've seen, not by a long shot, and it's just a shame that the story's let it down, because there's clearly a lot of work that's been put into this, especially in some of those fight scenes and the smooth animation we've seen. But it seems like maybe one studio or the group let them down, and that's where we got all the jitter. And
See it if you're
curious.
If you've seen Rings of Power and need to cleanse your eyeballs. Just,
I mean, that's one way to do it as well, yeah. But look, let us know your thoughts, but it's time for us to wrap up.
Kawaii-Fi Radio.
So that's the little mini episode extra we did promise. Well, we're going to leave things there for this episode. Thank you so much for listening and watching. Next time, it is time for the White Day episode, which means I need to talk to the Patreons urgently because I only just got back from Japan and I haven't had a chance to send this through. We love you. Thank you for support. On that note, if you would like to get more of this, subscribe and consider the Patreon as well. We have bonus episodes, outtakes, and a whole other podcast called The Pre-Show, which is really us just talking trash, just talking life and having just a general chin wag.
all the stuff we're not generally allowed to say on camera.
Yeah, because
We
it's
say it on
behind a
camera
paywall,
anyway.
so that makes it easier. But that paywall starts from $1 a month, so that's pretty reasonable. And it's
Find out who we've got beef with recently.
who don't we have beef with? Fiercely independent. But in all
This week,
seriousness,
Zadania.
oh no!
Yeah.
That's just you. But look,
I will fight her.
in the comments.
Yes. Zadania in the comments now.
Now, look, if you are listening, we have a YouTube edition of this, and if you are a YouTube follower, please check us out on whatever your favorite podcast platform it is. We're also over there as well. Makes us a bit more able to be brought along on the way. I do understand a lot of you do listen on the way home and to from work, so it's a good way to have us in your pocket to make it easier to listen. As always, big thanks to our Patreon members. As said, if you would like to support us, details are down below. And if you'd like to join the Kawaii-Fi community, socials are also linked there as well. Yeah, down there. There's a like button somewhere down here, and behind it this week is a ring of power.
Process.
It is just a glow ring, but it powers up. It has
I thought it was...
Don't know what he's talking about. Patreon. No, not really. That is where we're going to leave it, though. So, look, thank you so much for listening. We'll be back in a week's time with the White Day episode. Hopefully, we won't get struck down by a flu again. That's been a bit of a rough run. Yeah, we'll see you then. So, look, thank you for joining us. And until next time, watch some anime!
Where was Gondor when the road? Yeah, mind.